Hi, and welcome back to DraftKings Strategy and Predictions. This time it's for UFC Sunrise. Very exciting. We've got about 13 fights on the card, and if you're a true UFC fan, it's a lot to be excited about. There's some great fights. I think this particular card has a lot of 50-50 fights, which is going to make it really a fantastic card for GPPs. You've got a lot of exciting punts that you can mix in to your teams. And it's just a matter of finding that right combination to win the big money. I focus mostly on the GPPs. Not so much the cash games. I'm not so interested in winning $5, betting $5, winning $4 to win, betting 4 to win 4, 10 to win 10. I'm interested in trying to win the big money. So we focus on the GPPs. With those GPPs, as a reminder, we want to try to get about 100 points per selection, 600 points. That should put you in the running for some money. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. Sometimes it can even be a little bit less, depending on what happens with favorites winning and punts not really coming through. So with that said, let's get started. Let's take a look at this card. We're just going to go right in order of the list that's on DraftKings. So we'll start with the first fight. Glover Teixeira against Ian Cutelaba. Glover is at minus 125 and Cutelaba is at plus 105. But on DraftKings, you can see that Glover is the better value. So he's obviously a pretty good value play when you compare the Vegas odds to the DraftKings prices here. Short answer, I think that Glover can control this fight. If he fights a smart fight, he should win this fight by getting it to the ground and grappling. That's his path to victory. I do not think it would be wise for him to keep this fight on the feet. Cutelaba is extremely powerful, has knockout power, and can certainly knock Glover out as early as, the first 60 or 90 seconds. So I think the first 2 minutes are actually going to tell a lot about what's going to happen with this fight and how it's going to play out. If Glover comes in with his game plan and tries to take him down and imposes his will, he can ground and pound him or maybe even get a submission on Cutelaba. If he tries to keep it on the feet, then I think the advantage is going to swing to Cutelaba. So for DraftKings purposes, I think you actually have to have both pieces of this fight. You need to have Glover on a couple of cards, and you need to have Cutelaba on a couple of cards. My prediction for the fight is that Teixeira is going to win either by a decision or possibly a submission. But, I'm absolutely not ruling Cutelaba out here for a first-round knockout. And for GPPs, that's what you want. You want 100 points, 105 points, and Cutelaba is certainly capable of doing that. So my recommendation is that you have both pieces of this if you're going to play multiple cards. And if you're going to win the big money, you probably are going to need to play multiple cards because you really just need to mix in different combinations of fighters. So both sides, my official prediction will be Glover, assuming he fights smart, and that'll be by either a sub or by decision. But again, Cutelaba is certainly a live play here, and he could definitely come through. Next fight, really excited about this one. John Lineker and Corey Sandhagen. Lineker is at minus 145, and he's 8,500 on DraftKings. Corey's at plus 125, and he's at 7,700 on DraftKings. Sandhagen's taller, rangier. He's a good grappler. He's got good submissions. But he has not fought anyone the caliber of Lineker, and he hasn't fought anybody with the power that Lineker has. So that's where it's really going to be an interesting test for Sandhagen. But look at those scores on DraftKings. I mean, he's been a DraftKings star so far. All 3 fights have gotten over 100 points, and you can't ignore that. He's an up-and-coming fighter, and I'm definitely going to have him on multiple cards as a dog play at 7,700. Lineker, obviously he's the favorite. He can certainly knock out Corey. He's been in there with the best of the best. So, certainly you have to give him the advantage on paper based on his experience and based on his knockout power. But with GPPs, you do have to pick some punt plays and play them. And then Sandhagen is certainly one of those plays that I'm going to be targeting. As far as Lineker is concerned, yeah, absolutely. At 8,500, I'm not going to go crazy on him, but I will definitely have him in 1 or 2 cards because, yeah, of course, knockout power can get you that 100 points as well. So the potential there, his ceiling is there. But if I'm going to make an official prediction, I'm going to go ahead and say that Sandhagen wins a decision, assuming he can stay away from Lineker's power. All right, next fight. Another interesting fight. Carla Esparza against Virna Jandiroba. Now, this is another fight where the more expensive fighter is actually a Vegas underdog. Carla's plus 105, and Virna at 8,000 is minus 125. So obviously, again, when you're looking at the prices and you compare them to the Vegas odds, Virna is certainly a good value here. She's 14-0. She's the Invicta 115-pound champion. The problem with her is that she hasn't really fought anybody. And she's obviously unproven. She's a jiu-jitsu specialist, and she's a submission specialist. And that's her path to victory. The problem for her is that Carla is also a fantastic grappler, and her strength is her ground game as well. So if this fight does go to the ground, it's going to be wrestling versus BJJ. And, it's just hard to say that Virna is going to be able to submit Carla. So looking at Carla, she's been in there with the best of the best. Her last fight, she fought Tatiana Suarez, who's also another fantastic grappler. And Tatiana just mauled her. I mean, it was just a different level. I do think Tatiana is going to be the champ one day. So that's how much I think of her. And I think most of the MMA world thinks the same. So there's no shame in getting mauled by Tatiana. Tatiana mauls everybody. She fought a great fight against Claudia Gadelha. Some people thought she actually won that fight. And, I think that she probably actually wins this fight by decision. But for me, she's a fade. And the reason why I say she's a fade is because even when you look at her decision wins, she's not going to hit the watermark that you really want. You want 100 points for GPP. And if we're talking strictly GPP, Carla's a fade for me. Because even if she wins, I don't think that she's going to score more than 60 to 80 points. And, she's not even a favorite in Vegas. Whereas if you're going to play anyone on this card, I think it's got to be Virna. She's cheaper. She's got the BJJ where she can possibly submit her, so that's a path to victory for her. But frankly speaking, I'm not too crazy about this fight in general for GPP. But if I were to play any of them, either of these two, it would be Virna. Okay, let's move on to the next fight. Next fight, Augusto Sakai against Andrei Arlovsky. This fight, Sakai is a minus 145 favorite. He's 12-1. Arlovsky, we all know about Arlovsky. He's been around the block. He's old as F. He's 27-18. He's plus 125. And he's 2-8 in his last 10 fights. So even as a punt play, I'm not optimistic. And every fight is less and less volume with him. So even if he wins, I mean, you're not looking at a high ceiling with him. You're not looking at that 100 points unless he has a flash knockout. And I'm just not convinced he can knock out a guy like Sakai, who's a young, aggressive, up-and-coming heavyweight. So for DraftKings purposes, my preferred play here is going to be Sakai. I think he could finish Arlovsky, or he can stay more active and win a decision. I'll have him on a couple of cards. I'm probably not going to play Arlovsky in any cards, to be honest with you. The pick here for me is Sakai for DraftKings purposes if you're going to play. And his price is very reasonable at $8,400 if you need to slide in a middling priced fighter. Okay, next fight. Court McGee against Diego Lima. Another interesting fight. McGee is at minus 175. He's 19-7. Diego Lima is at plus 155. He's coming in at 13-7. Stylistically, it's going to be a question of who can impose their will. Can Court McGee get this fight to the ground? If he does, he probably wins. Not probably. He almost definitely wins this fight if it goes to the ground. Diego Lima is going to need to keep this fight standing. I think he's an improving fighter. I know his last 5, he's 1-4. But he's an improving fighter. He's got good stand-up. He's a good striker. He beat Chad Laprise in his last fight by first-round KO. And I think he's definitely a live dog here. So for DraftKings purposes, I think you have to have Lima on a card or two as a live dog punt at $7,500. His ceiling is high. If he can knock out McGee, the same way he knocked out Laprise. As far as McGee, I have no problem playing him at $8,700. He is the favorite. I think he's probably going to win the fight. He's going to probably win by decision. That's my official prediction. And if you wanted to play him as a cash play, I think that's probably a better play. I don't know if he's going to hit that ceiling of 100 points that you're really looking for GPPs. But if you wanted to play him, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't be mad at you. So, McGee, probably by decision, but I'm going to have both pieces of this. I'll definitely have Lima as a punt play dog in 1 or 2 cards. And McGee as well, I'll throw in there on 1 or 2 cards as well. All right, next fight. Jim Miller against Jason Gonzalez. Jason Gonzalez is plus 125, and his salary is $7,600. Jim Miller is minus 145, and he's at $8,600. Miller's 29-13. Jason Gonzalez is 11-4. For DraftKings purposes, I'm going to definitely have Jason Gonzalez on a card or two as a punt play. He's a lot bigger than Miller. And for me, Miller, he's just a little bit long in the tooth. And I'm not convinced that he's anything more than a gatekeeper at this point in his career. He's been in there with some great fighters. I mean, look who he's been in there with. Pettis, Poirier, Trinaldo, Hooker, Lozon, Alves. I mean, he's been in there with Oliveira. He's been in there with the best of the best. But I think Jason Gonzalez is a young and up and coming fighter, and for me, this is this is almost a dog or pass play for DraftKings purposes. If you're going to play anybody at the $8,600, $8,700 range, I think Court McGee is a much safer play for DraftKings purposes. So I'm probably going to be passing on Jim Miller. I might play him in a card or two at the most. And for me, Jason Gonzalez is a live dog. I'll have him also as a punt play in a card or two as well. It's just really a question of finding the right combination of these punts and pairing them with your high-priced guys who you really want to lock in. And that's what the advantage of playing multiple cards is, because you can lock in a couple of guys who you like, and then pair them with different punts and mix and match and see if one punt doesn't hit, maybe another will. So, yeah, Gonzalez on one or two cards. Prefer to fade Miller. My prediction is that Gonzalez wins this fight in an upset, maybe by a decision, maybe even by a third round head kick or knockout. All right, next fight, Angela Hill against Jodie Esquibel. Talk about low-level fighters. I mean, it's just such an unexciting fight for me. Jodie Esquibel is really the lowest level of UFC fighter, and Angela Hill, she's 3-7 in the UFC, and she's a minus 600 favorite, which is insane when you think about her record. So it just goes to show you how low level Jodie is. Angela Hill, she's going to win this fight. She's going to keep it on the feet probably. She's going to outstrike Jodie. She's going to have volume. The problem for me for GPP is that she's really expensive at $9,400. And, you're going to need to get 100 points out of her. And she's probably more of like a 70 to 90 point scorer for DraftKings purposes, assuming she doesn't finish Jodie. And she just, sits there and strikes. Her last fight that she won against Moreau, she did get 95 points. She had 114 significant strikes. Against Courtney Casey, which she lost by decision, she scored even 65 points in a loss. So for a cash play, I think she's a good solid player, a good solid fighter to throw in on your team. She's pretty much a lock to win. It's just a question of, whether or not she's going to get to 100 points, and I have my doubts. So cash play for Angela Hill, I'll probably fade her on GPPs. But if you wanted to throw in a GPP card, I don't think it's the end of the world. She's probably going to be low owned, and that could give you an edge. As far as Jodie's concerned, she's a complete fade for me. All right, next fight. The main event of the evening. Ronaldo Jacare Souza against Jack Hermansson. Jacare is minus 220. Hermansson is plus 180. What's interesting about this fight is that it's a minus 600 to finish inside the distance. So for DraftKings purposes, that tells me that you have to have a piece of this fight for DraftKings purposes, whether it's going to be Souza or Hermansson, because somebody's going to finish this fight, and that means 100 points for one of these two. So obviously there's not much you need to that hasn't been said about Jacare. BJJ, specialist, great grappler, good striker. He knocked out Weidman on strikes. I was actually at that fight. Weidman was fighting a great fight. He was actually winning the fight. But the experience of Jacare, he stayed calm, and finished him in the third round with a pretty violent KO. He's the clear favorite here. And obviously you got to put Jacare on multiple cards. But Hermansson is someone that you also shouldn't ignore, because he can win the fight as well. If the fight goes into the later rounds, he has a path to victory. He's a good grappler, and Jacare can possibly guess if this fight goes into the fourth and fifth rounds. It is a main event, so don't forget this is going to be a 5-round fight. So I'm going to have Jack on a couple of cards as well as a punt play. And if he finishes the fight by some chance, he's going to get you 100 points, and he's probably going to be on that winning $25,000 team. So definitely Jack is someone that should not be ignored on DraftKings cards when you're filling them out. So yeah, Jack on 1 or 2 cards. I'll probably be playing about 10 cards just to give you an idea. So I'll probably have him about 10 or 20% of my cards. And Jacare I'll probably have on about 3 or 4 of my cards. Maybe even more. I haven't filled out all my lineups yet. But official decision, official prediction for this fight is going to be Jacare, maybe by a second round submission. All right, next fight. Greg Hardy against Dmitry Smolyakov. Sorry if I mispronounced his last name. We'll call him Dmitry. He's plus 285. He's coming in at 9-2. Hardy is minus 345. He's 3-1. I was at that fight in Brooklyn in January where he got DQ'd. He actually lost that first round against Crowder. But let's face it, the UFC wants to get him a win. And this is, for me, is a complete setup fight. Dmitry was in the UFC. He got released, and they signed him specifically for this fight. So what does that tell you? It just tells you that, it tells me anyway, that the UFC is looking at the roster and saying, how can we get Hardy a win? Okay, let's bring back Dmitry Smolyakov and put him in there against Hardy so that we can get Hardy his first KO and on his way. I don't like the fact that it's a main event or co-main event. I'm not really sure Hardy deserves it, and I just don't understand what the UFC is doing, but who really cares? It's for DraftKings purposes where the fight is on the card. So for GPP purposes, I'll have Hardy in there on several cards, probably as many as 3 or 4 cards. He's got easy 100-point potential. His ceiling is super high. So you have to have him in 3 or 4 cards, or whatever, how many cards you're going to play him. I would probably play him in 30% of your cards or so. Dmitry, I'm probably going to fade him completely. I think there's just too many good punt plays in the $7,000 to $8,000 range that are more interesting and that have more upside than to waste, a card on Dmitry, unless you're playing, like 10 to 20 cards and you want to throw him on a card, just as a shot in the dark. All right, so prediction: Greg Hardy, first round KO. I'll definitely have him on some GPP cards. For cash game purposes, if you're choosing between, say, him and Angela Hill, I would probably say Angela Hill is a safer bet at that range. But for GPP, you want that higher ceiling. So Hardy. Next fight. This is going to be an exciting fight. I can't wait to see this one. Alex Oliveira against Mike Perry. Cowboy Oliveira is at minus 170. He's 20-6. Mike Perry is at plus 150. He's 12-4. Oliveira is clearly the better MMA all-around fighter. Better ground game. Better jiu-jitsu. Better kicking. Maybe crisper striking, but that's debatable on the striking. And that's where Perry has a path to victory with his striking. And at $7,400, I think you definitely have to have Perry as a live dog punt play here, because he does have a path to victory. Because Oliveira, I could see getting into a striking match and a brawl. And, if Perry clips him, he can knock out Oliveira. So for GPP purposes, Perry, I'm definitely going to have on a card or three as a punt play. And I'll probably going to have Oliveira on a card or two as well. For me, I think that Oliveira is probably going to win this fight by decision. But if Perry does win, his ceiling is very high because I don't see him winning by decision. I see him winning really only by KO. So if he does win by KO, you're looking at 100 points, and he can be on that winning card. So Mike Perry on 2 or 3 cards for me, 20 to 30% of my cards, and Oliveira I'll probably have on 1 or 2 cards as a favorite. But for me, the preferred play is Perry. And I'll go out on a limb and say Mike Perry by second round KO. All right, next fight, Roosevelt Roberts against Thomas Gifford. Roosevelt Roberts is a minus 450 favorite. He's 7-0. Thomas Gifford is a plus 360 dog. He is 17-7. Yeah, I think the easy play here is Roberts if you can fit him on your card, on your team. I think he's got the ceiling to either sub or to finish Gifford by strikes. He's a special fighter, and he's one of the top up-and-coming prospects. And, he's going places. So for me, I'll have Roosevelt Roberts on maybe 3 cards, and I'll play multiple punts on some of those punts that I was mentioning to you. Guys like Diego Lima, guys like Gonzalez, Perry, Sandhagen. I'll probably have some combo of those guys in there, along with maybe Roberts and even Hardy, mixing it in to see if I can strike, catch lightning in a bottle. So as far as Giffords is concerned, yeah, I'm not really too interested in playing Gifford on any of my cards. I'll probably fade them all together. If I was playing like 15 cards or more, I might have him on a card or maybe not more than that. But Gifford is a fade for me. Again, considering all the punt live dogs that I like in the 7,000 range, 7 to 8,000 range. And Roberts, I'd like to have on, 2 or 3 or 4 cards if I can fit him in there. Prediction Roberts by a sub, maybe in the second round. All right, next fight, Takashi Sato against Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders is plus 175. He's coming in at 22-11. Takashi Sato is minus 145. He's 12-1. And for me, Sato is the play here at 9,000. And the reason why is because I think he can get that 100-point DraftKings ceiling with a knockout. The problem for Saunders is his chin. He's got a very suspect chin, and he's been KO'd a bunch of times. I mean, look at his last bunch of fights. Loss, KO, TKO. Loss, sub. Jake Ellenberger, he beat KO. Jake Ellenberger loses to everybody these days. He lost to Joban by KO. He lost to Sabata by KO. I mean, I don't see how you can play Saunders here. I'm probably not even going to play him on a card, to be honest. I'm going to fade him completely. And I'll have Sato on probably 20 to 40% of my cards out of 10. So pick for me is Sato, maybe by a second round KO. And I'll be fading Saunders completely. And the last fight of the card here that we're looking at is Gilbert Burns against Mike Davis. And this is a fight that super excited to see as well. Gilbert Burns is a minus 270 favorite. He's coming in at 14-3. His last fight back in December, he dominated Aubin Mercier, grounded him, pounded him out. Actually, didn't pound him out, but he grounded him all night and basically dominated him from the first round to the third round. Lost to Hooker, beat Dan Moret, lost to Prazeres. He's up and coming. As far as Mike Davis is concerned, he's taking this fight, I think, on short notice, 2 weeks' notice or so. It's his first UFC fight, but I really like Mike Davis here as a punt play. He's got a path to victory with the striking. If he keeps it on the feet, I can totally see him winning this fight by KO. So for me, I'll definitely have Mike Davis on 1 or 2 cards as a punt play. As far as Gilbert Burns, I'll play him in 1 or 2. That's it. I'm not going to go crazy on Burns just because I think for me this fight is closer to a 50-50 fight. And at 7,200, you got to like that price from Mike Davis. 7,100, you got to like that price from Mike Davis. You know, maybe Burns is a 60-40% to win. But, 7,100 for Mike Davis to win on a 40% chance, you got to like that a lot as a punt play. So, my prediction for this fight, just for fun, I'm going to predict Mike Davis by second round KO. But look, let's face it, if Gilbert Burns wins by decision, that wouldn't be surprising at all. So, yeah, I'll probably have a piece of both of these. Mike Davis, at least a couple of cards, 2 or 3 out of 10. And Gilbert Burns, I might have maybe anywhere from 1 to 3 as well. All right, guys, that'll do it. I might come back with a short preview after the weigh-ins, after I get a look at all the fighters facing each other. Not sure yet. We'll see how time permits me. But if I don't, good luck. If you like the video, please like it. If you want to subscribe, great. Let's get it.